Good evening, everybody. Thank
Good
you
evening.
for good evening. Thank you for attending the hybrid meeting for Planning Committee Tuesday, the 24th of November 2020. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Councillor June Molyneux, Chair of the committee. Councillor Chris Francis, Vice Chair. Also present are officers and councillors who will be asked to introduce themselves in a moment. I'm just getting tied up in my wire. That's better. Please note that this is a hybrid meeting with some members here in the Lancastrian room and some members joining from home via Teams. And we also have registered speakers joining remotely. A recording of the meeting will be available online following the meeting. If you've joined the call because you're a member of the public who has registered to speak, please note you'll have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. If you are calling on a phone, you need to press *6 to unmute your device when I invite you to speak. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone will be muted. For ease, a pack has been prepared which contains the report, plans, presentation slides and any addendum for each item to ensure everyone can easily follow the agenda. This is available online. After officers have presented the report and any speakers have made representations, I'll invite members to make comments. When speaking, please reference the paragraph number and page number to enable everyone to follow you. I'll repeat the motion before the vote is taken to ensure everyone is aware of what is being voted on and call upon each member alphabetically to vote. If the technology fails, I'll adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue. If this isn't possible, a new date and time will be organised. So please ask all members to confirm they can hear and speak before the meetings begin. I'll call out each member alphabetically. Councillor Beaver.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening. Councillor Boardman.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Councillor Dalton.
Evening, Madam Chair.
Councillor Gordon France.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Councillor G.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Hope you're well.
Madam Mayor, I've just been promoted.
Oh, sorry.
Chair.
You're always your mate to me.
Councillor Gray.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Hargreaves.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Hilton.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Morwood.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Whittam.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Whitaker.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Chris France.
Present, Chair.
And our officers, Adele.
Here, Chair.
Ian.
Here, Chair.
Alex.
Here, Madam Chair.
And Nina.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Turn over. Apologies. I understand there's no apologies been received. Item 1 is the minutes of the meeting the 3rd of November, pages 3 to 6. Will somebody propose those, please? Thank you. Councillor Hilton. Seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Dalton. I take it everybody's in favour. If anybody isn't, speak now. The silence was good. Okay, thank you. Minutes are approved. Any declarations of interest? Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters on the agenda. As it's a hybrid meeting, if a member has an interest, they are requested to vacate the Lancastrian for that item or leave the call completely rather than just mute the microphone. The member then can return to the Lancastrian or rejoin the call following the completion of the item. No declarations of interest. Planning applications, the meat of the meeting. We have 4 items to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements are as follows. The officers will summarise the report. Registered speakers will be invited to speak in this order: objector, supporter, parish town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or agent a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who haven't registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings and ask that mobile switch to silent. With that, we will go on to item 3A. Willbrook, Bluestone Lane, Maudsley, pages 7 to 44, with an update on your addendum, although the recommendation remains the same. Ian's going to present this item. I have one registered speaker, the objector, Sheila Udall. Sheila, can you confirm that you're able to speak and hear the proceedings?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can.
Thank you. Ian, could you present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of 4 detached dwellings following the demolition of the existing dwelling and associated outbuildings at Willbrook on Bluestone Lane in Maudsley. The application site is located in the Greenbelt and comprises a dwelling house and 2 substantial outbuildings, in addition to a smaller wooden building. The site has previously developed land in line with the definitions set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, and the framework and local plan allow for the redevelopment of such sites on the proviso that the development does not have a greater impact on openness than the existing development. Given the current impact of the existing buildings on the site to be removed, the proposed dwellings would not be materially larger and would not have a greater impact on openness. On this basis, it is not considered that the proposed development will constitute inappropriate development. The proposed dwellings will be of a modest scale and simple modern appearance. They would reflect the domestic character of the site and nearby residential development and not considered to be harmful to the character and appearance of the area. The proposed dwellings would meet with the Council's interface guidelines, and there will be no unacceptable impact on residential amenity as a result of the development. LCC Highways have assessed the scheme and raised no objection. It's therefore considered that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. In addition, there will be no unacceptable drainage or ecology impacts. All issues are covered in detail within the committee report. The proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Sheila, would you like to make your representations now, please? Alex, can you start the timer?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've actually written down what I wanted to say, so I might be speaking directly contrary to what's just been said, so please forgive me. I'm Sheila Udall. I live in Bluestone Lane in the property next to Willbrook, the other side of a lane called Nook Lane. We've lived here for 30 years. And our concerns were raised with the council back in February when there were 5 houses, but actually they still apply with 4 houses on this site. We think it is an overdevelopment of the site, and particularly we have concerns about a real hazard in terms of the traffic, but also the drainage infrastructure, especially if more houses are built on the Mediterranean restaurant site, which is close by. So we note that the current property has 2 access points for a single dwelling, but according to the plans, there would only be 1 point for 12 cars, not mentioning any visiting vehicles. There's some restricted visibility given there's a sharp bend and a road which includes which includes a junction with Sidbrook Lane, which is the road to Croston. We've lived on Bluestone Lane for 30 years. It's the principal road through Maudsley. It's favoured by many groups of cyclists. There's heavy traffic at peak times and motorists routinely accelerating, both coming out of or heading towards that bend and junction, just where the access for the new houses would be. The stretch of the road is poorly lit, has a gradient, has an adverse camber at the next bend, and both we and our neighbours have over the years had to replace both gates and hedges destroyed by speeding cars. And we fear that many more vehicles turning in and out of this particular site could significantly increase the risk of more serious accidents on this piece of road. We're also concerned about the drainage on that road. Given the gradient, when the rain is heavy, the northbound side of Bluestone Lane actually becomes a river, and we've got photographic evidence of how the water bypasses the drain outside our house, flows past our property and Willbrook, and we seriously question how many more houses or enlarged properties the current main drain can accommodate. Also, the Willbrook land on the corner of Bluestone Lane and Nook Lane, although largely filled with debris, is a natural drainage ditch, and significant amount of water do collect there and flow from both there and Willbrook's Drive, adding to the river on Bluestone Lane, going down towards that bend. If that drainage is inhibited by development, the water is highly likely to back up across Nook Lane and into the low-lying part of our garden, which already becomes a lake quite often when the rain is heavy. So our objections to the plans are based on safety concerns, both traffic and drainage. And we have not focused on the issue of this being green belt. This end of Bluestone Lane is designated green belt. We understand the parish council has raised that. So we're saying if you do approve this, we'd seek your reassurance that efforts would be made not to jeopardise our homes any further or diminish the character of the village. Thank you very much.
You're on mute, June.
Yes, I am.
Sorry, love.
It's quite all right. I'll just have to say it all again now. I invite
You're not
members
Boris.
to make comments and ask any questions. And if you want to do so, can you raise your hand virtually on Teams, please? Councillor Marwood, I've got you, and Councillor Whittaker, Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. I too have some concerns regarding this development, and my apologies if I go on for a little bit longer than I usually do. Here we have a rural area of Maudsley with a range of housing along a linear development, well spread out for most of the part, with their own character, as you would expect from a development that's been over there this length of time. Then you have this mini estate of 4 rendered in timber buildings of little character as far as I can see. And my first thought was this was quantity over quality. Indeed, we should be grateful according to the application for this windfall site, I read, given that Chorley needs more houses. So if I can just digress for a moment and for future information, Chorley is not about to roll over and accept that because of some ill-considered judgment in the recent past, we are suddenly going to accept a doubling or a tripling of our housing numbers and just gratefully accept everything that comes along. So to get back to the matter in hand, we have this one-time cottage that was changed into a large bungalow, a nice brick bungalow, I would add, and a nice open corner plot. And are we looking to enhance this environment with something special, some quality homes? I don't think so. We're going to stick four bedroomed urban style houses at the junction of 2 lanes and the potential for 12 or more cars to be let loose at this junction. LCC Highways have no objection in this regard. Well, the day that any objection comes from Highways, we'll hold a party. No doubt there was a desktop assessment starting with a premise. No objections will be raised. It's not our job to do so. I'm not really interested anymore in models. I've had many models over these last 6-7 years I've been on planning, and I'm starting to think more in terms of reality. But let's not be too harsh. Perhaps what I'm asking for really is a site visit in order that we can assess whether or not this will have a greater impact on the openness of the green belt. And is it of a scale that is appropriate? Is it perhaps appropriate infilling? Does it meet the local need? I'm not sure about four-bedroomed houses. I wonder where all these large families are coming from these days. That's all we ever seem to get. And I have to say I was a little disappointed that maybe the parish council could have perhaps made a little bit more of a point of objection rather than just saying green belt, because I accept there's previous buildings and they can build something. I just don't think this is the appropriate for exactly the same buildings at this point. I'll finish at that point and let others comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Thanks, Chair. I'll support Councillor Morwood's request for a site visit because I am extremely concerned about this application. This is not in the centre of Maudsley Village. It's on Bluestone Lane. Bluestone Lane has been assailed by developers over the past few years. Going along Bluestone Lane You can't fail. The garage was converted into 4 tightly packed houses. It's just that there's an application I don't know what's the status of it, is at the Robin Hood pub, or the Mediterranean restaurant as it's called now. And there was a stable area that was given permission. It's outside the village. It's in the green belt. All the issues that the resident complained about, commented on, were absolutely pertinent. 4 times 4 bedroom houses, meeting what need? Meeting the need in Maudsley? I hardly think so. This is speculative development, seeing how much they can get out of it. I just think it's the wrong place. It's the wrong application. It's outside the centre. It doesn't do anything for villages. And I seldom disagree with Ian, but when he says it's not have a greater impact, I'm sorry, Ian, it will have a tremendous impact on that particular junction. So I'll support this, the application, the reference for a site visit, and I'll need some convincing to vote for it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
I've got Councillor Dalton, Councillor Boardman, Councillor Gordon, France. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you. Most of the concerns I was going to raise have already been raised. My major concern is the flooding on the roadway. I know that roadway very well, but that is Lancashire Highways Department, not a planning consideration as far as I'm concerned, or somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not up for a site visit because I think we all know it very well. So I'll vote against the site visit, but I will also vote against the application for the buildings, because I think it is out of perspective for the area, with it being on the very outskirts of Maudsley. It's very close on Croston and Eccleston. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks very much. I do have some concerns about this site. I do, however, not have any concerns about the fact that it's in Greenbelt. This committee knows, and our officers advise us all the time, that although a site is actually in Greenbelt, if it is a previously developed piece of land, which this site is, and which clearly has buildings on it at the moment, residential usage plus outbuildings, then we as a committee have been consistent in our approach and have some well-established, pretty much fundamental rules when it comes to these type of sites, which we've seen before on many occasions in many a rural village. Now, although we don't like them as councillors, I'm afraid we've got them and they keep coming up, because as part of national planning policy, it's much more favourable to build on previously developed land than it is in an open field in the middle of Greenbelt. That said, Bluestone Lane is, as Mrs. Udall said, quite a rat race at that bottom end. Cars do speed down there, no matter what speed limit sign is put on there. And the Parish Council recently lobbied to get that changed to 40 mile an hour, which they did do successfully. However, not many cars and vehicles travel down there at that speed. Cyclists, yes, there are lots of them. I do have concerns about the access. I was happy to see that the applicant had changed from 2 accesses onto Bluestone Lane to 1. Concerned that the access may be unsuitable. But again, as Councillor John Dalton says, how do we as a committee lobby and vote against what the Lancashire Highways say? I would like to see some more meat on the bones to Lancashire Highways statements, as Councillor Whitaker always asks for, but we don't seem to get it. So it's very difficult for us to gauge our decisions on that basis. Going back to Greenbelt, I looked very closely at this application and I did ask for clarification, which I think in the addendum there is some volume figures. I'm always concerned when we look at openness of Greenbelt. That can be interpreted in many, many ways. Some people look at it as tarmac on the ground. I'm afraid I don't. I look at volume in Greenbelt as the metre cubage of buildings which currently stand. And Adele might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think looking at the existing volume of buildings compared to the proposed volume of buildings, we're looking at an uplift of something like 17%. Now, 17% is not a materially greater increase in volume. Now, although those buildings have been spaced out on the site differently, the actual impact on the greenbelt will be minimal. That's clearly stated in the report from our planning officers, and we as councillors need to be mindful of that. One area I would really like to look at is not just the drainage from the site, but the watercourse. There is an historic watercourse that runs in front of that site. It's been overgrown and neglected for a number of years, and it does cause flooding towards the bottom of the road, past the Robin Hood and down Sidbrook. So if this application is approved, I would really like either a condition put in place to address that, or some kind of note going to Lancashire County Council Highways to fully clear and maintain that watercourse. That being said, I will support the officer's recommendation and I will look for an approval on that site.
I've got Councillor Gordon-Franz.
I'll be very quick,
And then
Chair.
Adele, sorry.
It's paragraph 8 and 10. United Utilities, I see, have no objections to the flood, and yet local people who've experienced of this site do, which I find unusual. And again, coming back to Councillor Morwood, I think we're more chance of winning the lottery than Highways objecting to a planning application. So I'll leave it as that, but I'm inclined to go for a site visit.
Okay. Adele, do you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Do you want Councillor Whitaker's comment before I come in?
Oh, sorry, I thought he'd not taken his hand down. Councillor Whitaker.
I just want to make the point that Councillor Boardman talked about, the outbuildings and so on. I know that area. I've driven past it thousands of times. I wasn't familiar. They're not readily available, not readily easy to see, those outbuildings. As I drive past them, there's a hedge in front and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure how we can say that they won't have a greater impact on this. I didn't. That's one of the reasons I wanted to go on a site visit, and I want to vote for a site visit so that we can see exactly what sort of outbuildings there are there, and particularly about the access point as well, because I think it's a very valid point. It's a dangerous bend. We can't take into account the Robin Hood application because that's not part of it, but we're looking to develop here. I think, as I recall, the previous application was for 4 or 5 houses there. So you're looking for 10 houses, a significant development outside the centre of the village. To meet a local need? I don't think so. Now, if planning was an exact science, we wouldn't need planners, we wouldn't need planning committees or anything else. That's why we've got issues like this to have discussions. So I would like to have a site visit, I repeat that, so that we can look at exactly what's on the ground there now. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Adele.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I think what I just want to direct members to is the National Planning Policy Framework and how the redevelopment of pre-developed sites is acceptable as a matter of principle. Again, the volumetric calculations are something that this committee is aware of. And in this instance, the uplift in volume is no more than 30%. So we're talking here about the spatial and visual context in terms of volumetric calculations. With regard to some of the other matters, as members have said, ultimately the Highway Authority, i.e. Lancashire County Council, have concluded that there's no harm to highway safety and have raised no objections and recommended conditions. The issue of flooding has been responded to in the main report, and again I would direct members to the addendum where there are suggested conditions to deal with future drainage of the site. With regard to some of the comments being made about the site being outside the village and not meeting a local need, there's no inherent planning policy requirement for it to be located in a village because this is a previously developed site. So again, we need to be mindful of that. I think the other comment that had been made, and I think it's a valuable and important comment, is whether the development as a whole actually reflects the local vernacular and respects the it's kind of like the design ethos and the character and appearance of the immediate locality. So I think that's a genuine issue that needs to be looked at by members. But I just have to flag with members that from a an acceptable point of view in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 145G does allow redevelopment of previously developed sites. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Any more comments? If not, I'll go to the vote. Councillor Marwood.
Sorry, Chair, struggling with my buttons. Just to emphasise, yes, I completely agree with Adele's comment. It's the character and appearance that exactly what I'm concerned about. I accept it's previous developed, and it's all very well talking about volumes and all the rest of it. But if it's within the volumes, but it's an ugly building or it's an ugly site, and this is not just this one. I'm not saying it's ugly or not, but just because it's got the right volume, it doesn't automatically mean we'll pass it. So yeah, the character and appearance is exactly what I want to envisage when I go on the site visit and look at the surrounding area. Thank you.
Okay, right. I have a proposer and a seconder for a site visit. I had a proposer for refusal, a proposer for the officer recommendation, but nobody seconded that. So I'll go through everybody. So it's just for or against a site visit. I'll go through everybody. Councillor Beaver, for or against a site visit.
For.
Councillor Boardman.
Against, Madam Chair. We know it quite well.
You might, everybody else might not. Councillor Dalton.
Against, as Councillor.
Councillor Gordon-France.
I'm for. I don't know the site.
We're just voting for and against. We don't need any other comments. Thank you. Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Gray.
For.
Councillor Hargreaves.
For.
Councillor Hilton.
For.
Councillor Morwood.
For.
Councillor Whittam.
For.
Councillor Whitaker.
For.
Councillor Chris France.
For.
And myself for. Alex, do you and so?
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry,
members have voted to defer determination of the application pending a site visit.
Okay, thank you. Moving swiftly on. Item 3B, land opposite B&Q, Preston Street, pages 45 to 68, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item and I have no registered speakers. Over to you, Adele.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located on land on the opposite side of Preston Street to the B&Q store, to the north of Chorley Town Centre, and it's set behind a row of terraced dwellings that front onto Trafalgar Street. The site currently consists of hard standing and vegetated scrubland. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of a two-storey apartment block containing 4 two-bed apartments with on-site parking facilities. Vehicular access would utilise an existing entrance located to the southwest from Trafalgar Street, situated between the terrace properties and the entrance to the day nursery. Site levels would need to be altered to create a level development platform for the apartment block, including the construction of a retaining wall, as shown on the submitted plans. Members will note that there's also an additional condition recommended on the addendum that requires the submission of a land stability report, and we have received an extra cross section to show the levels through the site. No neighbour representations have been received, and there are no objections from any technical consultees. The apartment block has been orientated at a right angle to the adjacent terraces to protect amenity of occupiers of those dwelling houses. Proposed site levels and existing boundary fencing would ensure no overlooking of the nursery or its playground from the proposed apartments or vice versa. The proposal involves an appropriate form of development within a sustainable location. No unacceptable impacts have been identified, and as such, the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions, which include matters of drainage, the protection of residential amenity during construction works, contaminated land investigations, ecology enhancement measures, and the final choice of construction materials. Thank you, Chair.
You muted, June.
Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I know this place very well.
What's that?
I am astounded that County Council Highways have said nothing. Within the area itself, on the estate, there's no problem. But coming off that estate onto the roundabout, the B&Q roundabout, is an absolute danger. And I get it's existing there. So I accept that. This area today is in the north-east ward. Had we had the elections, it would be in the northwest ward. So it's coming to whether or not it's on the east side and whether it should have playing fields and playing sites. When we have the next elections, it will be in the northwest ward. So that kind of situation will be taken away from it. I'm not really bothered about whether the still goes to the northeast ward, but they will then fall into the northwest ward and will be supported. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Marwood.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'm not sure about the all the discussion there on the wards, but that's not really part of the planning. But I hear what you're saying. I welcome this actually. Certainly needs a structural engineer to look at it. It's a slope and a half, but it's coming. They're not coming off directly onto the road from there. I welcome it because I'm glad to see some 2-bedroom apartments coming, because as I've said in the previous comments about just seem to get 4-bedroom houses, we also always seem to get 1-bedroom apartments. We've got loads of those, and I'm sure some of those, I know well that some people are really struggling in some of these ridiculously small one-bedroom apartments where you can just about swing a cat. Apologies to cats. So I welcome the option of some more 2-bedroom apartments. Thank you.
Okay, Adele.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I just wanted to comment that I hear the point about deficit of public open space, but just to make the point that because it's an apartment block, it's a chargeable rate at the moment in terms of still of £0, so there would be no contribution from a still point of view. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gordon France.
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself.
I know the problem.
If Councillor Marwood is recommended approval, I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any more comments from anyone? No. Okay. I've got a proposer and a seconded for the officer recommendation. Is everybody happy with that? If not, speak now. That's fine then. I would take it that everybody is in favour of the officer recommendation. Alex, you want to confirm that?
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to approve the application subject to the conditions in the report and an additional condition in the addendum.
Okay, thank you. Item 3C, Wise Mary's Farm in Horton, pages 69 to 88 with an update on your addendum. Ian's going to present this item and there are no registered speakers. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks permission in principle for the erection of up to 4 dwelling houses and associated developments at Wise Mary's Farm in Horton. The application site is located in the settlement area of Horton and comprises a motor vehicle repair workshop and a residential dwelling. The scope of applications seeking permission in principle is limited to location, land use and amount of development. Other matters must be considered at the technical details consent stage should permission in principle be granted. As such, matters relating to highways, heritage, ecology, character and amenity fall outside the scope of what the local planning authority can assess as part of this current application. The proposal seeks small-scale development and will be located on a previously developed site in the settlement area of the village. There are also some sustainability credentials associated with the location in the village. As such, it's considered that the principle of development is in line with the National Planning Policy Framework and the Local Development Plan. 4 dwellings will be an appropriate amount of development for a site of this size, configuration and location, and it's considered that 4 dwellings of an appropriate scale and siting could be designed and laid out with adequate space for off-street parking and residential amenity. Overall, the principle of erecting 4 dwellings at the application site is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan, and it is recommended that permission in principle is granted subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Somebody out there? Councillor Whitaker.
I don't know this site, but from the description that Ian just given, it's significantly different from the one in Moseley. So I'll go for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Boardman, Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just unmuted myself, that was all.
I wondered where you'd gone.
I tried to switch myself on. Yeah, I'd have no problem with this application. It is an application in principle, so we've got this site to come forward further with the details. So we'll get to have another look at it, but in principle, I've no issue. So I'd second Councillor Whitaker's motion.
Thank you. Councillor Dalton.
Same again. I've been preempted. Looking at the plan of the looking at the plan of the site, it's quite a large site, and to me it looks like an infill development. So I have no objections to the officer's recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Morwood.
Thank you. Just for the interest of consistency, I'll be looking at the character and appearance of this one when it comes along, as with the first application. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Have we got everybody? Because I've had a proposer and a seconder. I take it everybody's in that recommendation, the officer's recommendation. If not, speak now. Okay, so everybody's in favour of the officer recommendation. Alex, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to approve permission in principle, subject to the conditions in the report.
Okay, thank you. Item 3D, Cardwell House, Rollinson Lane, Heath Charnock, pages 89 to 102 with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present the item and I have one registered speaker, the applicant, Martin Bamford. Martin, can you confirm you're able to speak and hear the proceedings?
Thank you.
Okay. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can hear and can hear me.
Okay. Adele.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, members, this is a slightly unusual type of application as it actually seeks to discharge a unilateral undertaking that was entered into by the applicant when an application was considered for a replacement dwelling on this site. Essentially, the unilateral undertaking sets out that the applicant will not implement any permitted development rights, and this was given due consideration in the assessment of the planning application back in 2012. The reason the unilateral undertaking was advanced was because the replacement dwelling was larger than what would normally have been allowed under planning policy. As members will be aware, further to the recent discussions on an earlier item, it's generally regarded that an uplift of 30% in volumetric terms is acceptable when we talk about a replacement dwelling house. The resultant dwelling in this case is larger than that because the potential fallback position of permitted development extensions was taken into account. I would refer members to have a look at the presentation, which shows the house that previously existed and the house as it currently existed. So the application is recommended for refusal on the basis that the unilateral undertaking still serves a planning purpose. Thank you, Chair.
You're muted.
Martin, would you like to speak now?
I'm ready, thank you. My family and I have lived at this address on Rollinson Lane for 25 years. We're delighted with our new home. However, it is subjected to 15 planning conditions and 1 planning obligation, which remove permitted development rights A to C, even though we increase the amenity of the neighbours by removing overlooking windows and increase the openness of the green belt by demolishing a large pitched roof building at the rear. On the 11th of September this year, while we were both at work and our children were at school, we were broken into through a rear bedroom window and burgled. We're both pharmacists working in the local independent community pharmacy, and work during the current pandemic has been exhausting. So this invasion into our daughter's bedroom has left us traumatised and feeling very vulnerable. Obviously, we're looking now for ways to adapt our home to improve security and reduce our feeling of vulnerability. The quickest way to achieve this for any homeowner is by carrying out changes using PD rights. We understand the Planning Department's concern with respect to encroachment into the Greenbelt by using this right, but by removing it, they have removed any right to alteration and improvement and made it overly restrictive. At the time of our planning application, the figure of 30% volume increase wasn't contained within council planning policy for rebuilds in the Greenbelt. We weren't allowed to include our existing lawfully built garage and workshop, which was approved in December 1983, within the volume calculation of the existing dwellings, hence the result of the new house having a 47% increase. If the garage volume had been included, then the new house would have an increase of 30%, and therefore within the adopted figure. We have lost opportunities for domestic use, footprint and volume since the new garage has a planning condition never to be converted into living accommodation. It is our understanding the council now allows associated garages and outbuildings to be taken into consideration in the calculation of the volume of the dwelling, replacing them including one on the agenda today. We believe the main reason for the recommendation for refusal is the concern about potential to extend and increase the volume. However, PD rights prevent extending to the front of the house towards the highway. It would be impossible to extend to the side because of boundary constraints. Most of the rooms on the first floor have vaulted ceilings, reducing the possibility of a loft conversion. Extending to the rear would be limited again due to the proximity of the boundary. Therefore, reinstating PD rights won't have a greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt, and definitely not the possibility to increase by 50% the volume of our new home. To conclude, we feel over-restricted with the refusal to include our garage and workshop in the original calculation, when this now appears to be standard practice. Thank you. Just under 3 minutes.
It's all right. I was trying to find my unmute button. Adele, you wanted to come back, and then I've got Councillor Morwood, Councillor Beaver.
Yes, I just want to
Councillor
clarify.
Boardman.
I just want
Sorry.
to clarify the position with outbuildings. The case that members were discussing a short while ago was more than a dwelling house. It contained buildings that fell outside the residential curtilage. In this instance, the former dwelling was simply that, it was a dwelling house and its associated curtilage. So we wouldn't take into account the volumetric calculations of the garage. And just to make the point that the removal of the permitted development rights doesn't remove the ability to make future applications for future extensions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I've got Councillor Morwood.
Sorry, Chair, that must be a mistake. I haven't got my hand raised on my iPad.
Oh, well, you have on mine. Sorry. Okay, so moving swiftly on. Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was a little bit confused. If something's been broken into, that making it bigger will make it more secure. I'd have thought that putting up alarms, lighting and fencing. And I was a little bit confused with this as to permitted developments, that when he had the last one, that he said that he wouldn't be looking to increase, and he agreed to keep it within its current footprint. And he could come forward with planning permission. So I don't really understand it. Now, if Adele can cast any more light on that, but I'm just struggling a bit with this one.
Okay, I'll bring everybody else in and I'll bring Adele in at the end. Okay, I've got Councillor Whitaker, Councillor Boardman. What? Sorry, I said I've got them down.
Who do you want first?
I'm not bothered. Fight it out amongst yourselves. Councillor Boardman then, and then Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't. I'd quite happily let Councillor Whitaker go first. But
well, anyway,
seeing as we're on now, yeah, I do feel this is a strange application, and it is one that's quite technical. When you look into the detail of it, I think quite a lot of the gripes of the applicant that quite rightly go back to the original application. However, we're looking at a different application here in front of us. It does strike me that potentially the applicant might have been misinformed by his previous team, because when you undertake a unilateral undertaking, it does exactly what it says on the tin, it does remove your permitted development rights, and it removes it for a specific reason, is because the dwelling that was permitted initially was actually larger than what we would normally permit. So it is there for a reason, and it is to protect the overdevelopment of that property. I do have a few issues with Councillor Snape's comments. It's in relation to security and a fence. There is nothing stopping this applicant putting a planning application in to put a fence up or entrance gates or an extension on that dwelling at all. And we as a committee will look at that as we look with every other application. So I would support the officer's recommendation in this case, and I hope we can hope we see a planning application coming forward to what the applicant requires.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thanks, Chair. I have some sympathy with what the applicant says, but equally, I have some history with permitted development rights going forward after an application has been approved, and sometimes they are abused, to put it frankly. This was voluntarily entered into, as Councillor Boardman indicates there. I think the officer's recommendation is fair and I support it.
Okay, thank you. Adele, do you want to come back?
If Councillor Beaver still needs clarification, I'm happy to.
Councillor Beaver?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Madam Chair. Everything, the conversations have cleared everything up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, anyone else wish to speak? Let's see, no more hands up. If that's the case, then I have a proposer and a seconder for the officer recommendation and nothing else. If everybody's happy with that, if not, speak now.
Can I abstain, please, Chair?
Right, that was Councillor Gordon-France. Wishes to abstain. Apart from that, everybody happy with the officer recommendation? Thank you. Alex, do you want to confirm?
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to refuse the application to discharge the planning obligation from 2013 for the reason contained in the report.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of those. So moving on, item 4, review of Chorley Council's validation criteria for planning applications, pages 103 to 156. There's an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this report. Adele.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go through it line by line.
I am glad.
Essentially, we are required to have a validation checklist at a local level if we so choose, rather than relying on the national list. And what it means is when an application is submitted, we can ensure that it's supported by the appropriate level of documentation and technical details to make informed decisions. There is a requirement that the validation checklist is reviewed every 2 years. So we're just bringing it to you with a bit of an update. Nothing fundamental at this stage, because we're just updating the links. Obviously, things change through the web. We are, however, undertaking a more fundamental review of the validation checklist, and I'm hoping to bring a report back to you next month with a view to going out to public consultation. But this is just a rolling thing, effectively, that we do every 2 years to ensure that the validation checklist is up to date and is an approved document for use. Without your approval of it, then we can't rely on it in the validation process. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Whitaker.
Move the report, Chair.
Thank you. Will somebody second that, please? Councillor Beaver.
Happy to second it, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to comment? If not, everybody seems in favour. If anybody wishes to vote against the officer recommendation, speak now. No. Okay, so I take that everybody is in favour. Alex, do you want to confirm?
Thank you, Chair. Members have decided to approve the review of the validation criteria.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's it. I've no urgent business. ICT, can you stop recording, please?